Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Returning Home Cosmic and Unity Consciousness. We're here today with a very special guest, Scot Guariglia, and his dodecahedron behind him, and all of his knowledge and wisdom that he's gained over the years, experimenting, exploring, creating through geometry. Welcome, Scot. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Syren.
You're welcome.
This is going to be an interesting conversation, I think.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you about all the different explorations you've had with sacred geometry and energy transformation over the years. And if you'd like to share, in whatever way feels, correct for you, a little background about yourself, if you want to dive right into how you came across the varying explorations. And then we can dive into what it is that you're in front of there and how that can impact humanity's evolution. It's very exciting. I'm so excited to talk to you today. So
Well,
thank you.
thanks.
Yeah.
To me, energy is the most exciting thing we can ever address. I started working with pyramids when I was probably about 13. Made a little one out of a milk carton, and I was just fascinated by the fact that I could feel like energy coming out the top of this thing, like a cool breeze, if I just ran my hand over the top of the little pyramid. And then I made some plastic ones out of PVC. I thought, oh, I'll make a giant one, like big enough to meditate in. And then I went and I made one out of wood, and then I made one out of copper. And then I realized that there's a projection of energy actually below the pyramid as well as above the pyramid. So I opened up the top of my pyramid design so a crystal sphere will determine the characteristic of all the energy throughout the form. And I've been using that design 50 years. I was thinking I was listening to ABBA back then when their albums were just coming out and using the energy of what their music presented to us over the words, disregarding the words completely. And by laying on my back with my arms up, I found that my arms wouldn't go to sleep that way and my knees up. I've got a bit of a curvature of a spine, so I have to lay on my back when I meditate. I can't sit for like hours or even 10 minutes without the back on a chair or anything like that. So I found it to be a great advantage to take deep breaths and expand my energy to the edges of the universe in my mind. Imagine that point of light, the all that is, and to project myself through that point. So at first it was relaxation on the in-breath, which is tricky because you got to learn that because you're exerting a force to breathe in, but at the same time you want to imagine that as a total relaxation. And then when on the out-breath, you continue and it's even easier. So every time it's expanding out and then focusing on that point of light after the momentum has been established with that for about 5 minutes to go on through the point. But really, I was listening intently to really try to listen to the energy between the waveforms themselves. In that state, it makes sense. Logically here, not so easy. But I always thought of music as a waveform, and it's what is not that was most important than what is. And that's the energy itself. It's like the space between the branches of trees or the utility of a vessel that's actually the space within it, not the vessel itself. It's the same way with these forms. The forms are not the energy. Some people say, well, this is the quantum starship here, which is a merger of consciousness and the primordial energies of creation. This addresses all the elements, earth, air, wind, and fire, and also the etheric realm, which is the link for that is the dodecahedron, the shape of our DNA. So the first time I made a big dodecahedron, my son, who had ability to see auras and energy around churches and people and places and things, because I had my wife before he was born get in a pyramid. She thought something was wrong with the baby at once. I knew there was a transition that happened there. 45 minutes, everything's fine, but he came out with the best auric vision of anybody I've ever met. He taught me how literally to position the forms for optimal energy, because like the dodecahedron, when it's positioned correctly, all the energy fields, which are different on 12 faces, will lock into position. So I've integrated that into the synergy with the the Metatron's cube, as we call it here. It's quantum starship for optimal synchronization. But with the pyramid starting out, I learned to use energy in various ways, and it just became a whole another aspect of my life. Um, I used to, for example, my late wife, this was prolific because it went on for 20 years. I was a TV guy. I was a broadcast engineer for a TV station in Central Illinois for 22 years. So I had to get the station on the air. I'd get over there and I'd sit quietly, and I thought, well, I'll link in with my wife and because it made me feel close to her for one thing, but I took the chakra energy centers and combined them with hers so that if I just sat quietly, I could feel every single thing. When she woke up, I could feel it within like the minute of cognitive recovery. As she woke up, I could tell when she exerted herself, when she took a bath, anything, I could feel it as if her energy field was mine, excitement, depression. And I always thought if there was something ever like an emergency or anything, I get an instant impact. Now, moms do that with their kids anyway. We hear a lot of stories of that kind of thing, but this was through intent and extremely tactile. The symbolism in the etheric realm is what's really intriguing me now more than anything, because I discovered that in order for us to understand how this reality precipitates, we're going to have to look at the symbolic structure of what it precipitates from. And in quantum state, there's more dimensional characteristics than we have here. Now, one example that everybody's familiar for the most part with Reiki. Well, I had a friend that I'd only talked to on the phone progressively for a while, and she had a few problems, and I was able to fix those problems remotely. But the ultimate challenge was to repair a tooth, because she said, I got to go to the dentist tomorrow in one conversation. And I said, well, let me see if I can work on that, if you can hold off a day. She says, okay. So in the dodecahedron, which is the etheric gateway, basically, it's the same with our DNA. Our DNA is in the structure of the dodecahedron. That's how our spirit interfaces with this form. That's my personal discovery. We are avatars. I think it's so cool we can move and animate everything so perfectly from spirit. Just blows me away. But I took that into dream state about the tooth, and in a dream, I noticed that I had a sharp pain between like two of these top two teeth on the left side. She didn't even tell me where it was, and then I confirmed that later too. I had a dream there was a needle stuck between them, and I pulled it out with needle nose pliers and dropped it on a table, and it goes tink, tink. And I said, we've got it. Even in that quantum field, I knew what was going on here and could make the connection, which is very rare. And the next day I called her up and she says, yes, it's a dull little feeling. I said 3 days it'll be fixed, and it was. I thought, how interesting, because the symbolic representation of that, which aren't even traditional symbols, it's almost like dream state imagery that affects our reality, or typically our reality affects dream state. Because you have dreams that represent different things in your life and progression, sometimes things that are coming up in the future and all that. So that got to be really intriguing. But when I was going to college and everything, I was exploring alternate realities. My favorite was always to get into that point and go through the point. The pyramid itself stands for fire in the middle. That's your chi flow. So when you're in the pyramid, it increases your cellular energy. Biomed Central is a source that I was looking at about a year and a half ago. They did a scientific study, technically scientific, and determined we got about 30 to 33% more energy, which is an effect of the pyramid shape. So I consider that to be the battery charger for ourselves as a battery. And the dodecahedron opens up the meridians. Everybody that I've given sessions to over the decades says, boy, I feel so much warmer. That's because the chi flow has been enhanced. One guy's ears got all red and he looked all red and everything. He goes, wow, I feel really warm. I said, yeah, that's the effect of the dodecahedron. So if you've got that combination, I sleep half the night in the pyramid and typically half the night in the starship now, where it used to be always just the dodecahedron, but the dodecahedron is part of that. Also, to understand how sacred geometry really works with the Platonic solids, we go back to Plato before Christ was ever born. And he assigned an alchemical association with each of the elements with the only 5 forms that we can create in physical reality, whereby all side lengths and angles are the same throughout the form, like the cube. All side lengths and angles throughout the form are the same. That's easy to visualize because it's a simple structure. The cube is associated with the earth. Tetrahedron is fire, the icosahedron is water, and the octahedron is air. When I put the icosahedron in my form, I noticed, which is water, I noticed this increased hydration in my skin. I mean, within minutes of putting it in there, I thought, that's cool. How did he know that? And then I put the octahedron in there, and it's like, oh my God, it's like my allergies are getting much better. I can breathe clear. It's just fascinating. I don't know how that guy knew those things. I've not found that anywhere, but somehow he knew that. But the dodecahedron being the etheric gate, oh boy, when I first built that thing, 6.5 feet around, same size I use today. And my son, he goes, Dad, and he stopped me in my tracks. This was the first time he'd ever seen it. He says, there's lights in there. I said, what? He says he saw lights inside the dodecahedron. And then we watched, and over 10 minutes, he says, they're all coming out. And I go, I don't know what's going on. He says, they're up in the 4 corners of the room and up in by the ceiling. I go, okay. So I thought that out for a bit, and I thought, those got to be entities. So that opened up a whole new thing. So then I said, okay, if you guys are spirits, I want you to do something to communicate. Let me know that, you can hear me. And he said, they're starting to move. And I'm like, geez, it's like tense. And then he says they made the shape of a dolphin in front of him out of light.
Oh,
And I
interesting.
thought, how incredible that is. So that was the onset of about 9 months of communicating with these entities, of which I could not see ever. But they could draw maps. They could go out. Like if I asked them to go check on something, they could do it and come back like remote little investigators. One time they said, you should take the kids to go see this movie. They'd say the name of it. He'd have to read all this. It took a bit because you could watch his eyes as he would read this stuff. He's like 10 years old. Um, he says this movie would be really good for the kids, and this and that. Sometimes I'd test them. I'd say, I'd ask them for definitions of things, and it was almost encyclopedic the way they would respond. It was really quite entertaining. But my life's been like a movie. I'll tell you all these different facets of things. One time I woke up in the pyramid, and it's like I woke up, I thought I got up, everything looked the same, but this gal was in my basement. Like this beautiful redhead gal with like translucent skin. She holds her arm out, like in her inner forearm. She says, "Feel me, I'm real." And I touched her. And I go, "Okay." I said, "How did you get in here?" Well, that was an alternate reality. It wasn't even this one. Because
Oh,
then somehow I ended up going back in and coming back out. Everything's normal. It's like, oh my God. Which brings me to the dodecahedron because there's a lot of missing time. My dentist was a good doctor friend of mine, always adamant, as doctors are, about quantifying everything. I said, I bet you this thing I've built, because I took my original dodecahedron was on a platform floating on inner tubes, which was resonantly tuned to the body. I built this whole thing structurally that way. So when you listen to music in there, it enhances the effect of the dodecahedron, but there's a lot of missing time events that occur. I mean, drastic. So I said, I bet you can't keep track of time in there. He goes, I always can. He says, I'm never like where, because he has to keep on schedule for his patients and all that. He says, I never miss that. Well, he came over for a session and it was about an hour and 20 minutes. I thought he's been in there long enough. So I poked his shoulder and I had him look at his watch before he got in there. And I said, without looking at your watch, how long do you think you were in that dodecahedron? And he goes, seemed like 5 minutes. I said, look at your watch. And he saw it an hour and 20 minutes later. Just cracked me up because he had never experienced anything like that before. Oh my God. the effects of energy. It's like I was in the dodecahedron one night, the etheric gateway, and this is how this works. A friend of mine's 480 miles away. I'm laying there and I saw her face as clear as can be, which is kind of miraculous anyway, because it's clear as me looking at you. And the actual thing that really surprised me was I knew she saw me as well. Her expression on her face was like, oh my gosh. I got a text within 60 seconds. Said, oh my God, I just saw you. And I said, yeah, this is how this works.
So
But
you went inside first and then that happened, or you were just near it?
I was inside at that time. Going to be, I call it the walking the razor's edge. I did the same thing in the pyramid that I do in the dodecahedron. You don't want to fall asleep, but you don't want to be awake. Some people think of that as the lucid state, but it's also your communication point. It's a very refined position to be and not fall off either side. Because like if you're a little bit too tired, you're gonna just fall asleep. If you're too jazzed up from the day and too many things on your mind, you go into the logic state. So the magic happens right in between those two. And if you can just hold that using your breath, intent, and projection, it gives you a distinct ability to do things and perceive things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to. So these things have impacted my life. I even took it into, we got a storm going out there. It's rattling the house a little. I even took that into physical performance because I noticed that even there are a lot of accounts of professional, like sports people, no matter what they're doing, visualizing things before they do it or while they're doing it, like a golfer imaging his golf swing before he takes it and this and that. I thought there's something to that. But I remembered I used to be a broadcast engineer for a TV station. NBC had a little show of some sort where they had this little tiny girl. She was like really short and put this big guy in front of her and he could just pick her up like nothing. But he could not do it if she willed herself to be extremely heavy. He couldn't budge her. And I thought, I'll never forget that because that was a clue as to how to use energy effectively. So when I'm in the gym, I'll do an infinity sign into the core of the earth and then bring it up through the left leg. Your left side is the receiving part of your body. Your right side is the projection side of your body. So I bring that up through my left leg, through the, or they call it the Dantian point, your point of energy storage, and then down through my right leg, down in through the center of the infinity sign, and then into the core of the earth. So I breathe that energy up through that loop, and I wait for my left foot to start getting hot. That's my tactile clue that I'm successful in bringing that energy up. So I'm breathing it in and breathing it out through the right side. As soon as that's established, I want to feel the core of my energy centers to be equal with the power of the earth. And whatever weights or whatever my resistance is, I imagine that as a mirage or like feathers, or it's weightless. And then I just hit it with the power of the earth, and it's like unbelievable. That can just double the power in certain instances. I ran the Senior Olympics, and that was 5 years ago now, I guess. And some of the race I ran in 200-meter sprint, I did got the silver medal for that for my age group, Senior Olympics. So I just turned 68, and I feel the best I've ever felt in my whole life. You start combining all these energies together and good nutrition. And I was diagnosed with leukemia back 18 years ago. And I actually got the cure for it, cured myself. I was advised by a guy who had breast cancer, and they spread it to her brain and uterus and gave up on her. She cured herself and shared that with me. All cancers are related. And anyway, that became a very big pursuit at that time to save my life. But then I thought, what is the worst affliction anybody will ever be up against ever? and that is aging. So I set out to try to figure out how do we anti-age to the greatest extent possible to increase our quality of life to the greatest extent possible. That dodecahedron combination with the pyramid is absolute gold. I take those things anywhere and everywhere that I go. Even I went to Florida, and I was in a hotel. There wasn't even enough room on the floor to put the pyramid in there, so I had it straddled between two beds where I could just get into a piece of the energy field of it while I was sleeping, because that's where I get my acuity for everything, for strength and balance and being able to sense things beyond this simple world. Um, it just keeps going. So does all that make sense?
Oh yeah, it's fascinating. And wait, my question too is that before you're getting in, like for example, the pyramid or even, the starship, are you intending a certain thing, or are you just getting to a meditative state and seeing like what comes, or what is in that moment to unfold for you, or like is there a specific methodology as to, depending on why you're going in at that moment, what unfolds?
Yeah, it depends on my state too. Like if I'm extra tired, for example, and I used to be in research at Caterpillar Tractor Company in Peoria, Illinois for that was 9 years. And I distinctly remember coming home and I'd be really kind of tired about 4 o'clock. So I get in the pyramid, do my 20, 25-minute meditation. It's just like getting up in the morning, put that energy right back to normal so that I wasn't dragging all. Otherwise, you just drag all the way to the time you go to bed and then you crash and hope you can sleep well. So that's one intent that I could use. Another one would be to just explore other realms. Like I always call them places in mood, whereby I would take a particular piece of music. Usually I'd listen to certain ones, and the one that clicked, I knew, okay, that's the one I want to go with today. If you really think about it, every single song you ever hear has an energy to it, just like people do. It's like a signature energy. In fact, that's how I tune in on people remotely. Even if I just talk to somebody on the phone, I've got their energy signature within 5 seconds, and I can then like connect with them remotely at any point in time that I want. I think anybody does that when they like reminisce about a vacation or something like that. You're thinking, oh, that was really nice laying on the beach. I want to be in that energy. And you bring that back to yourself, or look at a picture, that's like from the past. And it brings back that energy state, clicks those memories. Smell does that really well sometimes in an instant. So we do these things all the time. It's just that the pyramid really helps you to understand the difference between not doing that and doing it, and then taking that energy to the next step. But each one of these songs, any song, you can pick them any you want, will have a good energy. I always wanted the positive ones, nothing depressing, nothing negative. It was always in celebration of life and gratitude to the divine for every single breath we've got, basically, because we're really lucky to be here. I really learned that from the leukemia. It's like I was in absolute total hell, pain like you would never imagine. And yet I still thank God for the pain because it reminded me I was still alive. I said, I want to rise like the phoenix out of this stuff. You help me do that, and I'll share it with people in need. And I've kept that promise ever since because it was completely natural. To me, nature is everything. And if you want to be in perfect alignment with it, you've got to work with this stuff. Because this, like the dodecahedron, let's say you've got all this emotional trauma from past events, not current, because you'll keep feeding into it. But it, like if you had a breakup at some point in time, and those emotions are still destroying your ability to get back to yourself. The dodecahedron is like, I think of it like a washing machine. It's like it just vaporizes that garbage. Probably, well, surely 40 to 50% of anybody that gets in these forms will see the light of the divine. I think of it as God, the architect of creation. When you combine all the energy fields of all the elements, like what we have here, and then you branch that through the gateway into the etheric realm, you're sitting there just as we would sit with God, because physical existence is immaterial to those energies. All this manifested from these energies originally. So you're sitting there with this potential. It's like potential energy just sitting there waiting to be driven by intent. Intent and emotion drives everything. The dodecahedron magnifies intent. So like the closer you get to God, you realize that this is the state of unconditional love and bliss. And I always think, wow, this is just amazing. But after a while, you say to yourself, now what? That's the question I'm sure God was thinking of. It's like, I've got to invent some polarities. We got to get some action going here. Because otherwise, nothing happens. You just sit there in heaven and it's like, okay, well, I know my body's back there. It's healing and everything, but still, it's like, it's like, to me, reincarnation is very real. I think that was eradicated from all the books and beliefs because it gives you personal control, and they'd rather have control over you instead of you. So it's a good way to hijack it by making you believe that you're just here and now and die and that's it. But we existed before we were born. I do remember being in the queue, as I think of it. It's like a cloud of souls. That's like a cylinder, and it spirals up into infinity. And you get close to some people and you talk to them or communicate. It's all telepathic. And when you do that, we are like light and sound, just most scintillating, beautiful things you could ever possibly imagine. There is no pretense or anything. You know every single thing about everybody, and they all know everybody knows everything about everybody. And we're all excited because we're going to be born. We're going to have this cool experience and talk about our parents and all that stuff. And then we come down here and it's like, oh, not as easy as you would think up there when you're kind of in a semi-bliss state, in love and light. But that's the price we pay to experience the euphoria that we can generate here. There's different aspects of that: love, peace, joy, sex, whatever it is. Um, the more passion, I think, the better. So I say turn up the volume on everything because we're only here for a while. Then your body's going to trash out, most probably. I'm trying to work on this immortality thing, but I haven't got it figured out yet. I'm just trying to write it for all I can get out of it.
I have a question for you about something you said a while back about losing time, not correlating to the aging aspect, but when you go in there losing time and needing to be like here, in a meditative state, not where you're going to sleep and not where you're overly alert, anxious, etc. So is there a way that, I mean, because I'm what I'm feeling about that is to be like, say, you want to say grounded in some kind of way so that as you're traveling in these different experiences you're having within it, that you're actually still coming back and not, going so-called too far away, right? So how do you navigate that in that type of a geometrical form that is where are essentially going to God, right? You're in that experience to still maintain your stability where you're at while you're traveling.
Well, I think there is an automatic connection. They talk about the light connection cord to your body. I've never actually seen that. But what's interesting is the familiarity of being with God is so intense, so endearing, and wonderful that you don't care. But this is another facet of this thing, though. There are times where I will shut my eyes in there and I swear it's 5 seconds and I open them and just 3 hours later. It's like I did not exist. I don't remember going anywhere. I don't remember seeing anything, nothing. It's just blink back. That's it. But I'm so regenerated after that. It's like when you leave your body, it can heal like incredibly fast. and incredibly well. I wouldn't really say necessarily you're leaving your body like when you die, because the more in your body, the healthier it is when you're in cognitive state. But I think we get out of the way of our body's regeneration. Our emotions impact that. And I can clear out in the dodecahedron, go to a store and come back and feel completely different just because my energy field merged with those people in that environment Now, another thing about the pyramid, which I get little downloads sometimes about what I ought to talk about. This is really cool. Uh, when my son was young, he had multiple dreams of me being a pharaoh in Egypt and described God forms down hallways and how he put jewels into chests or whatever and brought all these jewels and everything for for me being buried. And one of those was the Anubis. So I kind of had him on my mind. In dream state, while in the pyramid, I had a meeting with the Anubis. His head was like the size of a skyscraper, and I was standing on a platform just in mid space. And the intuitive feeling that I had was that if I wasn't perfectly truthful and coherent in everything that I said and thought in his presence, he could atomize my existence into non existence with the blink of an eye. But what I asked him was, can you give me my memories back? Because that's the job of the Anubis. He's the guardian of the underworld, which is your transition state between lives. And dream's done. I thought, how am I going to get my information back? Then I realized it's in your DNA. So that's been my workout, through all these years to understand how things work and all that. It's just encoded and you get it as you can access it. So that was that's one of the most profound emotional times of my whole life. And it wasn't even in this reality.
Wow.
Just absolutely phenomenal. So I went to Egypt a couple of years ago to find out what if I've got an affiliation with something over there? Well, in the Great Pyramid, because that's been my inspiration. All my pyramids are it's called the pi relationship, the 3.1415926535, and on and on. And Great Pyramid didn't do it. It's like, okay, I feel regular pyramid energy. And we went through pyramid after pyramid after pyramid. One day got up, and our guide didn't always understand where we were going because he talks Arabic a little better than he does English. And he took me to this pyramid, and it reminded me of another vision I had in the pyramid decades earlier, where I was hanging on a platform, and there were chains on the platform up to the top of the pyramid. And I came out of a mummy, and I'm looking at this mummy, and I could see the wispiness of my spirit and the mummy. I thought, that's really wild. And I thought, okay, let's go up above. So I went up above the pyramid, and I looked down on it, and it was kind of like a step pyramid. And I thought, but I like the cool, smooth ones, like the Great Pyramid. So I wasn't as impressed by the pyramid. But that pyramid we went to in Egypt, I got close to that thing. I felt this buzz coming on. And then we were standing in this one place, and it was like getting overwhelmed by energy. But our guide, he's talking. Love that guy's name, Zach, by the way, in Egypt. And he says, this is where the Pharaoh was disemboweled. Oh, wow. Hieroglyphics. Got this pillar here, archway. Put my head against this, my hands against this stone. Literally, it was like I was the stones themselves. That doesn't, again, make logical sense, but absolute 100%, no doubt about it. I felt I was the stones themselves. Their energy is me. We went to the museum in Cairo. I'm walking along. There's a wall to my left side to enter another room. And I told my friend of mine, I said, that's that energy. That's that. It's Snefru is what it is. Pharaohs and Nephru. And I said, that's that energy. And we walked around there, and sure enough, right, without even seeing it, there's the gateway to the netherworld there. Massive stone with all these hieroglyphics, and everything to set that up. But sacred geometry is encoded in the hieroglyphics. It's encoded in all the vessels. It's every cell of our structure. Everything that lives is based on sacred geometrical proportions, or it wouldn't exist. So when you eat organic, clean food designed by the architect of humanity, that is what will imbue us with more energy, whereas anything synthetic is going to detract from that. That's my absolute belief. A lot of people right now are talking about this methylene blue. It's synthetic. I will not do that stuff. I don't care what they say. But it's being heavily promoted right now. I did see one negative instance of studies about it, but everything to me has to be designed and created by the architect of humanity, an expression of nature. And thinking about the expression, when you're in these forms, you're combining your consciousness, your energy of your consciousness, which is really what we are, with the primordial energies of creation. That's an expression of a vehicle that you become, that you can take into quantum state and travel anywhere. So like the last guy, Travis, he's a cool guy, who had a session in here. He says, I was flying the starship. He said, I was going straight towards the sun. And he got real excited about it. He said, I had weapons on there and all this stuff because it's your intent. So it's not that this is the starship, but we refer to it as that because it defines that. So when you're in there, you take off. It's kind of very similar to like doing some of the plant medicines, like ayahuasca, shrooms, and that. But here you are the absolute pilot, and you're in perfect control. You can snap out of it like that. People see past lives. They have visions of future realities. Had one gal, she said these etheric doctors came in and repaired her digestion problems. God, there's no end to what people see in there. It just fascinates me. My favorite's the light when they see God. The other second level, which is predominant, is the purple energy. Like with Reiki. Now, my late wife and I, we trained with energy endlessly out in the woods, and she was in the stones, believed she was reincarnated shaman from Native American tradition. And things we learned, she taught me how to read the stones so I could hear like voices and music and all kinds of, well, one time, it was always my favorite. And she always shut me up if I was going to reveal this, but it was this little blue rock. It was just a tiny little thing. It was circular. And I held it to my solar plexus. That's the way you'd read the energy. And I said, I see you dancing around your room in your underwear. So after that, she got embarrassed about it. And that was before we were ever married. And she called that rock Big Mouth. She would never let me read that rock again. So that was entertaining. But that Egypt trip was something else. I really wish they'd find the body of Senefru, just in case that could have been me or an association or something that I could learn more from it. So a lot of these people say it's disrespectful to be digging up these pharaohs and stuff. Kind of a catch-22. There were curses on some of those things. They got all these guys killed. That's a whole nother thing. But I'd like to see if that was me, I'd like to see my body from a past life. Wouldn't that be cool?
It will definitely be interesting as these things come to light, what's been under, it within the earth, but also kept under wraps, like not the truth being revealed, and how that helps connect all the nodes and the dots of everyone that's here now. Because many of us, I feel like, that are here now have been in these other pivotal times, that we're all here now through these evolutions.
I totally agree with that. We got Atlantis and Lemuria. I think my inclination to make the dodecahedron was more referencing the Atlantean mentality. Now, you probably heard of Bashar. I had a personal meeting with him when he was first starting long ago. That guy, this was an interesting thing. I learned so much. I had this, and it was in the pyramid. So many of these phenomenal energy related experiences came from quasi being awake in the pyramid. So I'm walking along this cliff of stone on my left, and then there was a right angle turn at the end, and there was like an elevator entrance there. So I go inside and I see stars on the wall, like star patterns all lit up. I found if I touched one side and another one in some stars, things started moving. But it was like I had no mass to my body, no inertia. So this thing starts spinning all these different angles all over the place. Then I ended up 300 years in the future, or thereabouts as I guessed it to be. And I come out of the elevator. This was before I had ever seen a computer in my life, let alone a cell phone. And everybody's sitting there on these benches, like at a college, with something in their hand looking at them, just exactly like our cell phones today. Nobody would acknowledge I was even there. And then we were suspended above the ground because the ground had been contaminated. You couldn't even go down or weren't supposed to go down there. Although I did, I went down some stairs. Everything was on metal platforms for people to live. But the big question that came to me at the time was how do these people even reproduce? They never interact with each other like, at all. Everybody is silent and just sitting there for hours. So I asked Bashar, I said, what is the significance of that elevator? I'll never forget this because I thought, I don't even know why I asked him that. But he says, that's what we call an infinitely accelerating reference frame, which will take you from one point in time and space to another. Then I realized it's a signature identity that really determines our proximity in physical space-time. So for example, my energy signature relative to that around myself. Now that's how we're going to be able to travel through these great, as we think of them, long distance interactions. Like if I wanted to go to Orion, which the some of those, well, the big pathway and the Great Pyramid is supposed to be aligned with that to channel energy back and forth in ancient times. But if we wanted to move to Orion, or maybe this happened with the Aztecs who all disappeared, if we could record that target signature and somehow re-identify ourselves with that target, I think we could actually teleport in an instant to that new location. And that's possibly the way they actually set the stones in Egypt, is not to physically move them, but just to have them teleport from one position to another, potentially through sound. Because I know if you could analyze the sound reflections off of an environment, maybe that would be enough to pick up some of that energy. But every single thing is alive, so everything around you has a living energy in itself. So how do we quantify that in a geospatial sense to be able to re-identify with another projected reality somewhere? And these are the things I think the aliens supposedly are using, which kind of goes into another avenue here. Quantum communication. I've got a quantum radio that I built. It was based off Steve Huff of Huff Paranormal. So I thought I'd just be talking to some dead people, which they're not actually. They're more alive than I think we are. That kind of came. They don't like ghost stories because you're the ghost. So anyway, I had the distinction of using a dodecahedron as my antenna. One instance, when I first built this thing, because I was married to my late wife at that point in time. She passed away about 7 years ago. But anyway, I had the big dodecahedron. I had the dodecahedron on my quantum radio. I said, I'll give you first dibs on talking to somebody in the great beyond. Well, her sister's son had passed away recently. He went to Costa Rica and came back and died within a day and a half. And I still to this day don't know whatever happened. I don't know if they ever figured it out. And it was almost like he had a premonition that that was going to happen previously. But I said, who do you want to talk to? She says, I want to talk to Andy. He's the guy that passed away. So she goes, and I recorded this. She says, Andy, are you here? He yelled out through that thing, one of the clearest voices we've ever heard. And he says hi to his sister. He goes, hi, Melissa.
Oh.
Just like that. Well, I had that saved, you know. Her sister was mourning his death for like a year and a half. It was like wrecking her whole life. One time my wife was in the hospital and I was sitting there with her sister. And I said, you want to hear a recording of Angie? She goes, sure. So I played that and some of the other recordings I'd made, changed her whole life. Just to know, just to hear his voice and know that he's just fine over there, made all the difference in the world.
What kind of a device is that you made? The
Well, it's an amplifier and other peripheral units that they use on guitars for like reverb and that kind of thing. But there's a business that supplies what they call, it's called Ghost Hunter apps. And you get the app, you put it on a tablet, and you plug the tablet in, and it looks through Wi-Fi. It'll grab a voice from anything that it can from the quantum field.
I see.
And I think it was Edison and one of those guys, when they first built the first radio and there were no radio stations or anything, they picked up voices. If you look deep in this stuff, you find that voices before any of that even began. I had a scanning radio that scanned through frequencies, and it was made to pick up paranormal voices. And one time I heard a gal just doing operatic like scales, la 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 la, and then she'd go up to the next one and the next one. 10 minutes later, I turned on that Ghost Hunter thing. She did it right through that too, the same exact thing. And then the day Prince died, I asked him what killed him, and there's a whole video I put on YouTube. It's got like 23,000 views or so. I think it's the best paranormal investigation of Prince of all time. I asked what killed him. Mainly, that was the big question because I was kind of concerned. And it turned out these people interjected. They said it was actions of the stovepipe. And I thought, what the heck is that? So I looked on Wikipedia. Stovepiping is unsanctioned information flow through government.
Oh.
And so that got into some deep stuff. But what's cool, and I think maybe it's because of the dodecahedron. Steve Huff, I've never heard in any of his recordings music. It's always just somebody talking. But I always got music and sound effects and dolphin sounds, clocks, all kinds of stuff. So I asked Prince, I said, can you sing something for us? Well, he was kind of distraught. At first, he says, oh my God, I've been killed, he yells out. But then he sang, Own the Stars. That was all I got. But he literally sang Own the Stars with like 2 beats. And that's all I need to know, because that's Reach for the Stars or Own the Stars is literally the byline for my new business, Divine Geometrical Universe, which, by the way, is at divinegeometricaluniverse.com. So that's
Oh, your screen froze. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh. Hello? Oh, there you are.
looks like we lost it there for a second.
That's okay.
But,
I was like,
but anyway,
storm maybe.
I don't know. It came back at least.
Yeah, welcome back.
Thanks. But anyway, we get these conference calls going. I'd say probably 98% of the English language isn't even used. Because when you start to extract information from people that, like hundreds of years ago, the terms and the words they use are just like, what the heck is that? So we had to establish somebody to look up this stuff as we go to interpret what we were getting in real time. So sometimes we'd have 2 or 3 people on board with that to address what it is. A lot of times we're talking about species of animals and plants, and picked up, I think, Thomas Jefferson once. Oh my God. those guys had great radio voices and they didn't even have radios. It's like, that is impressive, man.
Well,
So,
are you lining up your dodeca to certain lines? Like, are you feeling into like where the magnetics are of like where you actually have that to line it up a certain way as well?
well, what's really incredible, first of all, people say, well, you got to take it outside. No, you don't. Actually, the energies you're dealing with in there are primordial. They existed before any of this, even our outside existed. So it's not dependent on whether you're in a forest, on a beach, in a hotel, makes no difference, works the same. But what is critical is the geospatial positioning. And I don't know why that is. The upper face of it has to face north, with true north. Then the fields will lock. I know that one was lime green, as my son told me, but I never wrote down the other colors. I could spank myself. I don't think I've got it anywhere. If I run into it again, that would be great. But that was always my reference point for the dodecahedron. It's something about, yeah, because the Earth didn't exist back then either. I don't know why that does that. I can't explain that one. It's just good to know that it does. If I put it like offset, perfectly offset, he says the colors will flip. They just flip back and forth. There may be some utility to that function, but I haven't actually ever done that. Like
Yeah.
offset it, on purpose just to see what it does. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to try that sometime.
Yeah, you know
You
what
think
yeah, first thought I was thinking if you did that, it might invert I mean, it may invert something if say somebody was working through something they wanted to invert, like setting it that way. I mean, I'm wondering. You'd have to kind of just experience and see what it does.
that would be cool? We
Yeah,
need to investigate these forms, though. I wish I had a research team. I could keep 50 people busy 24 hours a day for a year, I think.
yeah,
There's so many ways we're going to look at this. I'm going to take this down to Florida, and that's going to be up and coming. And they're going to do heart rate variability tests, HRV, which determines your physiological age and that kind of thing. But there's a lot more to that we can scientifically analyze, more so the effects of what this does. Now, we did have a biopulsar reflexograph system here on site, and I had a gal get in there 7 minutes. That was it. She was in there 7 minutes. We did a before and after image of her aura, and it made a significant difference in a positive way in 7 minutes. That was phenomenal. And then we gave her a starship session and gave her another reading. For me, like 5 years of getting tested, my heart chakra is always the lowest because it's always been traumatic or whatever. Well, this form here, the starship, opened that up for the very first time. And it's like my heart rate or my heart energy was the highest of them all. It's like, that doesn't happen. It's like, that's so cool to
yeah.
have this tool. And it doesn't exist anywhere on the planet that I'm aware of. Nowhere. This doesn't exist. But why would somebody do something so crazy unless they had all this background info?
Well, that's what I was going to ask too, is where can people experience this? You were saying you're taking it to Florida, but you'll be um, most likely taking it around so people can experience it, or they can come to you to have a session,
Mhm.
right? Because does it work remotely if you were to offer like say a remote session? Would it work the same?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so. I've got crystals I've charged in here, and I put one of those on me. We've got those for sale. I've partnered with a friend on that. And it's like a little atom bomb of energy. They're like radiating energy. So I can appreciate the fact that I could tactically potentially take that energy with me, at least on a smaller scale like that. But people can come here. I'm in Lake Cormorant, Mississippi. So there's still less than 10 people on the planet that have even experienced this one. But then I'll be taking it around Cocoa Beach area of Florida. And then I got invited to talk and present up at the Global Pyramid Network conference in Chicago. That'll be the last weekend of September. And the Italian team that made those discoveries in Egypt, they're going to be there. And I looked at about half of the people from out of the United States that'll be presenting. So it is truly a global conference in the Pyramid House that's in Chicago, for people that are aware. It's just this great big facility. I guess underneath it was designed by people from Hollywood to emulate like different things in Egypt, the tombs and all that. So I'm excited to see how that pans out as well.
Yeah.
But they've proven that pyramids will help with seed germination. I saw some warehouses where they had all these massive truckloads of seeds and they put them in these pyramids to get better responses from their plants. I've got an e-bike, and I swear that thing, since I put this in here, it goes farther on a charge than it did before. I'd love to see that studied to
Yeah.
find out if the added energy somehow, maybe from quantum state, actually elevates the potential energy in those lithium batteries. I don't know. There's so many questions that we have. And like Biomed Central finally got more energy from pyramids. What does this do when it opens up those channels? I don't know that either.
Right. Well, and a lot of these measuring mechanisms, these measuring tools are made so long ago. So to measure these new devices, these new creations, say for example, what you have to research and see what is it actually doing, the implications, we need new tools to measure the actual expanse of energy, right? Because I mean, some of these things are so much vaster than, the 1800s tool that was created to measure something, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like that's a great aspect to measure and research and see what is it that actually doing with the colors and the waves and the sign and the frequencies and
Yeah, because we only see such a tiny piece of the spectrum that's so huge. I mean, even if you look at our familiar measurables, um, electromagnetic spectrum, it includes audio and what we visually see. And then it's got your gigahertz and your tetrahertz and on and on. But like Bashar said, when you're getting into the frequencies of our life force, you're talking about quintillions of hertz,
right,
which is way beyond anything that we can even measure.
right.
That's the problem with it. But our life force is in quantum state. We don't go anywhere when we die. I know it. We're actually translating our consciousness through our vehicle of expression here. And the DNA is the gateway for it, just as it was for the entities that came through the big one I made, coming through the spiritual gateway. Same thing. It's just on a micro scale, with our DNA. But just think if we could extract any and all information from the memory that's stored in that DNA, it would be phenomenal because we've got our ancestors' lineage in there and everything. I did hypnosis with a friend once, and I extracted quite a few lifetimes out of that, um, which was interesting. Everything becomes much easier and clear when you're working with the energy of the pyramid. It's like if you take your fingers and you put them together and you got a blank wall behind yourself or like a dark floor, you should see a faint little line between them. And a lot of people demonstrate it like that, but if you do it in 3D, it works a lot better because you can see the three-dimensional aspect of it as it angles off. So that's just a tip, like you can swing one finger around another and see that the three-dimensional quality, or put your fingers like that and see them all crossing. That's about all I can see with energy though. Now there is one point of warning, and this I gotta anybody that ever buys a dodecahedron from me, I want to give them some training and also assistance with my friend in Florida because she bought one. She was in a real depressed state, and that dodecahedron changed her life. She went out to Oklahoma and set that thing up, removed herself from everything, practically lived in the dodecahedron for about 6 months or so. Completely changed her life, completely turned it around as it took all the stuff out and gave her the chance to get back to herself, which is really what you are when you're that energy. You realize this is me. I am this energy. And that really helps you to understand that when people have a a different nationality, different viewpoint on things. It's all 3D programming that's just piled up on what is actually you. That's the veil itself that blocks you from the quantum state. So you got to get through all that stuff. The dodecahedron, for example, helps remove it so that you can get down to the core of what you really are. And then it's just like the ultimate freedom. I mean, there is no freedom better than being completely freed out of that cage of this physical reality just for a time to regenerate, discover yourself, see what your best intention should be, what your future should really be looking like that you want to create for yourself, because we project our future. If you know how people just keep repeating the same thing, it's like people have the same types of problems over and over and over, and you can see, God, they definitely are creating it, but they just don't see that themselves.
Right.
These forms will help people to see that because it extracts you from the garbage, and then you can look back at it and change your life. It'll be a phenomenal psychotherapy tool. I
Absolutely.
mean, for that and physical regeneration, energy, every aspect. I looked at the projections of implications with AI. What I did is I gave it all and every single discovery that I've made down the line. And I said, how would you assess this, given that this came from sacred geometry? It came up with the term geometric modulation or space-time geometric modulation, and said that it would absolutely change every single aspect of our society and the way we operate, the way we think. Everything will completely change because of this. So I feel like I'm like on the like the leading edge of this transition for the entire world. It's very exciting, and I'm sitting here like, out in the middle of nowhere.
Well, we're gonna share your website so that if, say somebody does want to have you come out and bring your dodeca, say at an event, or they have a space to set it up if they want to contact you or ask questions, etc. They
That'd be
can find,
great.
yeah, find you and what you're doing and open that accessibility for others to experience and heal, expand, connect, within themselves, with, to the source energy, because that's important. That's how everyone is returning to their own home per se. They're clearing out, they're dissolving all this other stuff that's not them, so they can align to their mission, align to why they're here. What they came to do, how they came to serve through what you're sharing of what you're doing, what you've learned, and parallelly feels like a big mission, from what I can perceive from here with what you've been creating and learning, which is a mere beginning point of what's even coming to be understood of what the implications are. It's huge. It's brilliant. So
It's
yeah,
amazing. I
yeah,
love for people to get sessions because they teach me. Literally, they're teaching me about quantum state because even I tend to just keep doing the same, and I explore and I learn this and that. But the diversity of throwing somebody in there that's never experienced it. And it's also a bigger impact because it's kind of like if you do this over and over and over and over and every day, and I sleep in it every night and all that, it tends to just kind of go like in one little line. And it's really magical for me. But when you put somebody in there that's never been in there before, it like slams their energy really hard. If they don't go into a bad detox, um, and by bad, I just mean that like they might be having to process their negative garbage because you got to get rid of it. So sometimes they have to face that. Once you acknowledge it, it sets it free. And that can be from past lives or this life. That's the thing that these get to. They'll get to any point in your lineage and start working through all of it to get you free of it. So sometimes initially you got to go through that just for a transition. Like the last guy that got in here, he was doing every organ of his body had a different kind of like negative spirit associated with it. And he was chipping through, like digging his way through a cave. Once he got through it, and he did it in one session, and then he went to the light of God. And he's like shooting towards it and all that. What an adventure! So cool.
Yeah, because you just never know. I mean, everyone's experience is unique and unique in the moment of what's unfolding for them. Really, it depends on where they're at. And even how they're perceiving what the experience is, right? Because
Mhm.
certain things could be dissolving away that are even imperceivable that just need to go. There, the infinite amount of accumulations being in a form from anywhere they've ever been um, could dissolve away in any way that they're ready to. Whether, say somebody's not attached to any of these things, they might not even be aware that something is dissolving away. And any incremental layer in between that, depending on their experience. So it's really fascinating how the consciousness of the person and the consciousness of the geometrical form are unifying in those instances, from my perception, anyways, to create this synergy between it and them for what their soul is ready for, right?
Uh-huh. Well, a lot of people see black. They'll see like black shadows coming out of their body. And I always thought that was really cool because it's been obvious throughout the years that this stuff's happening predictably and repeatedly, actually, over time. There are sometimes I get in there and it works differently. It's almost like somewhat unpredictable. Oh, aggregating energy in there though. Sometimes when I really get it, and it's like I'm taking my mind and I'm compressing this energy. This let's see how much we can get in here and what it'll do. And I hear bang, bang, like people banging on the walls and the ceiling and all that stuff. I had my late wife used to say that was me, and that was the first time I thought of it. When I woke up, I was always working with energy, and we hear some really loud bangs and stuff in the house, and I thought the place was haunted. She says that's you. Now I'm seeing it when I do the form. Kind
Oh,
of weird.
it's how you're saying it's how it's moving the energy through it is banging through the house, right?
Yeah, it's
So,
this thing shines. I've had people 2 blocks away, and they say they can feel it. It's pretty interesting, and especially when somebody's in there, like if somebody's in there for a session, I will sit and go between dream and wake state while they're in there, and typically we'll see each other. That happens a lot. They go, "Oh my gosh, I saw you." Well, I see them briefly, and then they go, "I never can just sit and see them for a while." It's just like maybe 4 or 5 seconds, and then okay, you're free, and off they go.
so there's like some aspect of like during their session, that's the like beginning point where you're there, and then they go. I mean, they go experience whatever it is that is needed, and you're like in a guide, like a space holding guide in a way. Is that
Exactly what I was going to say. I
okay?
imagine the light of all that is in that star, and that it's shining, and they've got infinite protection. We don't want any negativity coming through that thing. I don't tolerate it on the box. I don't tolerate it in any form, nothing. One time I heard a negative tone in a voice on the quantum box, and I said, "You're done. Shut that off right there." And we were finished at that point. I will not tolerate negativity. Our absolute initiative and focus is to elevate ourselves to the best version of ourselves, and nothing is going to interfere with that.
Right.
One day I was surrounded by aliens in my room. You got to realize these forms have effects. I woke up in bed, and grays were around my bed, and it's all I could feel was the emotion of hate, which was very unfamiliar. I had no idea why, but I couldn't move. I was absolutely like something in my brain was disconnected. I couldn't move. But I thought if I get out of here, I'm going to wring every one of your necks. So, and that was at the onset of making the dodecahedron. So I thought I got to get around this. So I was reading Communion, Willie Strieber's book, and he says in their world, your imagination is real. That's really all I need to know. I could create weaponry. So I devised some of the state of the art quantum weaponry that's just in my imagination. I said, "You guys mess with me one more time." I have not had a bad dream since. I have never seen anything. It is like pure gold. The other dream that I had, well, actually not a dream, but a vision. There's only been four visions, waking visions I've ever had in my life. That was one of them. Another one was a black butterfly that went through the wall, which was a transition indicator. Another one was a snake, huge snake on the ceiling that came down and tried to get me. But the other one was I woke up, bright, shiny, beautiful morning, sun's coming through the window, the room's lit up. And I look towards my feet at the end of the bed and I see these white scarabs. They were like iridescent, like with real long, wispy, light legs. They were like lit up and they formed single file V-shaped patterns. And then at the ceiling, they were single file. And then they fell on my shoulders like tickling, but I felt like they loved me. So it was like I didn't twitch, move, try to knock them off or anything. I could literally feel this happening. And a couple of years later, I read somewhere it said that was indicative of royalty of Egypt. I thought, okay, is that my incentive? I've got some connection, obviously, there. Bashar said that I was part of the team that sunk Atlantis. We screwed up somewhere. He says, that's why my back, I have scoliosis. He says, that's why. He says it's self-limitation, so I don't destroy the world again. I said, okay, try to do better this round.
The things we have the opportunity to work through and dissolve from these other times.
Yeah. We just have to be careful now as a race that we don't destroy ourselves because when you hit this awakening point, every civilization will either go with the aspect of compassion and love and helping each other or self-destruct. There's like layers and layers of fused glass, like from nuclear annihilation under the earth. So my message is, and pretty much anybody that comes out of that form is we got to get on it and start helping people instead of like all the control systems and negative stuff going on out in this world right now. It's just prolific. We've got these polarities, I think, that are just screaming to separate out. So if the world's or our continuity goes appropriate to what we're enmeshed in, I want to be in the world that's going to be positive and like helping kids to really learn and explore. It's like school is so god awful boring to me until I got in high school and college. But I never knew physics and geometry could be combined like they are. Those are my two top favorite subjects in school. Never even had to study geometry. My mom got me this thing called Schwann's Outline series of college physics. And I was such a nerd. We had 3 months off in between the school commitments. And I took that all the way to nuclear physics in 3 months. Hardly had even had to study even through college or anything. So I did really well with that. But there's an inherent aspect, I think, of everybody that's got like a leading edge that there would be their contribution to make everything work. So we got to learn together, work together, find out what's really embedded in the DNA of people. I mean, some of these young kids that play these instruments and stuff, it's like, oh my God, you could study that for 2 lifetimes. You wouldn't be able to pull off what they can do in like 8 years old. It's like the more we awaken, the more we're going to see.
Right. Oh yeah. And a lot of these kids, these children and the new babies that are coming in are fully activated and have way more you want to say galactic DNA turned on, but more everything is on and illuminated in a completely different way than the ways that some of us have arrived when we arrived, of needing to do these discharges and clearings and realignments. There's not the potentiality for accumulating some of these distortions, and they're coming in fully aware and knowing like what the mission is. So that too, through our evolutions and all these other brilliant, innovations and inventions that people are doing now, the collaborations together to bring not just humanity together, but like all these other civilizations through space that have all these really evolved technologies to work together to create these um, unknowns of unity consciousness through interweaving everyone's unique abilities. And it's brilliant and so fascinating what's happening now, because it's like everyone's arriving in different stages or finding out
Mhm.
where each other is, or where each other has been, or even has been, say, in these other times, say Atlantis, Lemuria, wherever, and they have all this accessible now information, or it's coming back online, remembering information of these ancient tools, frequency awareness of how to transform through sound and then through geometries, and then amplified by connecting, with each other. It's amazing what's happening now. It's so
It
cool.
is. You
Yeah.
remind me of another instance. I was in dream state. This was way back at the beginning too, and I was fighting aliens and whatever. But somehow they took me on a ship outside of this dimensional existence, but it was in such a way that it completely separated me from the group mind of humanity. But the ship itself was alive, and now I understand why. But that feeling of being alone, I have never ever experienced anything like that. You don't know that because you're enmeshed in it at all times in that spirit of humanity. But when you're extracted from it and cut off, it's a feeling of loneliness times a million, like you can't even imagine without experiencing it. I thought that was quite phenomenal. But the fact that that ship was alive intrigued me. I thought, why would it be a living being? Well, in order to create a vehicle for interdimensional transport, it's going to require an energy field. And upon that energy field would be grown your ship, which would be a synthetic version of your DNA, so that you would have a link to it as you do your body. But how they traveled through interdimensional space, I don't get that yet. But I think that theory makes perfect sense, that your ship would be your DNA grown on an energy template, which actually your body's grown on an energy template anyway. Have you ever thought of why is one cell growing here as opposed to over here? Every cell knew exactly where to propagate to manifest a human form for you to animate. So these are things. It seems so weird to be talking about this in the open. I never did, but God shut down my business. It's like every eventuality was a roadblock. Said you got to stop. And I turn on my radio. I use it as a divination tool. It's like I'll ask a question, then I just hit the button, and then the song will tell me in words in the song what my answer is. I pushed that one time, and this is where I cut it. I said, because it's like I was putting a lot of energy in this sacred geometry and getting it in my mind to bring it to the open and this and that. I thought I can't do this and that business. And it literally said, and I've never heard this since or before, it said, it was like a message from God, which I get quite often. And he says, he usually tells me he loves me and all this stuff. But he said, I've set everything up for the last couple of years, all through the metaverse, and that every avenue has been perfected. And now it's your turn to take your part and make it happen. I thought, oh my goodness. I resigned within a week from my publishing job, which I really liked, but it's like anybody I had a meeting with, it was like somebody died, some emergency, some storm, on and on and on. And it just blocked me continually, where it used to be like an open door. Sometimes I go, man, this is too easy. But that just shut it down. And everybody that I knew that knew about these things, and then I could maybe create this, which I didn't know if I could or not. I didn't know if it could be done. And I thought, I'll give it a shot because of the pressure I was getting. And sure enough, I was able to do it. A friend of mine was saying she was channeling Metatron. She said there's only one thing that he says is paramount. He says, do not put any man-made frequency in these forms. Don't modify it. Do just the way you're doing it. Crystals are fine in the apex points. I do that with every form I make. I put crystals in there to amplify the whole form. Like with the pyramid, I make them so you can put a sphere on the top. So that can be like, here's a piece of lapis. I could put lapis on there. Usually I use clear quartz. Whatever you got in a shape about that size will fit perfectly on them. And it's phenomenal. The only thing that really didn't work well was a magnet. I put a horseshoe magnet north and south in the directions of the Earth's field. My heart kept skipping. I thought there's something bad about that. It's got to be the natural force of the Earth. So people say, well, what do you plug this into? Well, you don't. It's plugged into the etheric quantum field, just the way nature has designed it. And it's absolute perfection. I don't need it to be any more powerful, actually. It is as powerful as it needs to be.
Right.
As much energy as you can process, that thing's going to keep ramping it up. So
Right.
cool stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing. I can't wait to hear about the more people get to experience it. This has been really exciting to
It is.
yeah, I'm so grateful to have connected with you and have you share more about everything you've learned and everything you're doing. And this is just the mere beginning, I feel like, with what is going to be discovered and even weaved through different experimentation with what you've created. Thank you so much for coming on. I feel like we could still talk for like another probably 4 or 5 hours about so many different things, but maybe you can come back another time and we talk about
Sure.
some other things. This has been really, really wonderful.
Well,
Um,
thank you for inviting me.
you're most welcome. I will put your website and your details in the description so that if there's people or facilities that wish you to come out, they can connect with you, schedule sessions, come out if they want to come out to where you are, etc., so they can find
Sure.
your website and your speaking engagements also in Chicago upcoming. So do you have final words for all of us before we close for today? Anything else you want to share?
Just, I wrote a book on curing myself of cancer called Remission Through Divine Order. RIRE hyphen mission, like remissioning your life. First thing I put in the book, take responsibility for yourself first. You got to do it. You can't give anybody else your power. Be in the here and now. It's the only point of power you got. And you can head for the stars from there.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. It's been a true joy and an honor to learn and expand with you. And I look forward to hearing all the beautiful things to come with your creations, your intentions, and what you're doing. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I look forward to seeing the light in these people shine because that's really what it's about.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, thank you.